Hey everybody, welcome back to You Are Free TV. It is Thursday, July 30th. Can you believe it? 2026. I'm so glad to be back with you here on the channel. I'll jump right in with my disclaimer. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is protected by the United States Constitution, protecting free speech, as well as the Sullivan Act and reporting. It is not intended to bully or harass anyone, never to incite violence, hatred, or lawlessness of any kind. It doesn't give legal, medical, or financial advice, and there are further disclaimers in the description below. So welcome back to You Are Free TV. So glad to be here today. We've got tons of news. I'm going to jump right in. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. This is literally a shoestring channel at this time. Ever since, getting to banked, it's just never been able to get back up. So if you can support, that's fantastic. There's ways to do so below. So let's jump into the news. And thank you so much for everybody supporting monthly. And everyone who jumps in, you make the channel happen. All right, so the news. Where am I going to start today? There is so much. I think I'm going to go with. The call to call Senator John Cornyn. Right, we have this great new thing that's going on where, of course, they're blocking the confirmation of AG Todd Blanche. Right. And while we're all still skeptical, will he pull it off? Is he for real? Trump's behind him, so I've kind of come up behind him here, and they're blocking him. So there's a reason for that, right? Because they know that there is a massive amounts of legal litigation coming that is going to affect them all. And of course, John Cornyn, Tillis, all these people who are soon out and whom the American people can't stand. Certainly, those of us who are conservatives, they are out in a few months' time, right? And so they are refusing to confirm Todd Blanche, even though they confirmed Clayton. That happened, right? And Bill Pulte, we'll get into it in a second. 30% of ODNI cut, fired, out. But what we've got here is, and of course, all the election steal information, including the foreign election espionage cases that are going on, that Pulte and John Solomon, et cetera, the whole team there has been involved in getting all that information out. But this situation with Cornyn and Tillis trying to hold up the confirmation and hold it hostage of AG Blanche with others, but those are the two, sort of kingpins, is that Trump has come out and said, hey, if you're going to hold it hostage over what is the $400 million of restitution, or basically what is the, his IRS settlement legal case, right, where that money was going to be going into basically the anti-weaponization fund, right? And this has a lot to do with everyone who suffered under the Biden regime for all of the evil and the lawfare, and before that happened. And so very interesting that Trump is saying, hey, if that's going to be your contingency, I'm not going for it, right? And so he's come out and said, I'm just going to pull Blanche's nomination. I'm just going to pull the nomination, and we'll just let him sit as acting AG. And I'll wait until you guys are out of office in November. Then we'll come back to it, right? And in the meantime, he could nominate someone else, and I'll get to that in a moment, and just really hold them up with that, another ringer like Bill Pulte was there at ODNI. And it may be, I'm kind of calling it the Cata-Pulte, Cata-Pulte, for what he was able to do in such a short time at ODNI and with the election steal information. It was funny. I was watching Steve Bannon earlier, and he said, hey, why not just nominate Pulte, put him in, he didn't say this, but have, Blanche just be acting, and you can Cata-Pulte to anywhere you want, because he's a wrecking ball, and just get all of their hairs on fire in a tizzy to get Blanche in that way. But what is the call here is to call Cornyn's office and let him know exactly what you think about his obstruction of Trump's agenda, his continuous just rhino activity for years and years. McConnell is, for all intents and purposes, dead. Okay, we've got, Cornyn's gone, Graham is dead, right? And we've got, Tillis out, all these people. And so it's a new day. And Thune, I believe, will soon be out too as director. I want Mike Lee, him and 10 other senators calling to stop the recess rights. Don't go on recess. We want to stay, get the Save America Act passed and all of the Trump agenda put through. But basically, the call here is to take action and call Senator Cornyn's office and let him know what you think. And so in DC, that number is 202-224-2934, 202-224-2934. And then his Texas office, which would be great to hit that up, because that's where he's like best friends with the Muslims and he's just super living on the cash cow of all that government funding they're getting. 512-469-6034. 512-469-6034, especially people in Texas. Be great if you were the ones to call. Let him know what you think of him on his way as the door's slamming it on the way out. But basically, this is Trump's thing, saying, hey, I'll just remove Blanche's nomination and he'll just sit as acting, which is absolutely brilliant and fantastic. So go ahead and do it, or do it on billblasterapp.org. These are the same people blocking people like Carrie Lake from becoming ambassador, you know, the embattled Carrie Lake who just keeps going where she's called after 2 stolen elections for Senate and governor in Arizona, and all that's coming to a head. Maricopa County getting exposed massively. So anyway, I wanted to start with that. That's a great action point, as well as all of your senators at 202-224-3121. Okay, that you want them to stay and work and not go on recess like grade school children for their fancy vacations. Okay, so thanks for listening to that action plug, but let's jump in here. We have so much going on, and it's all just so important. And so I think I'm going to start here. I think I'm going to start with what's going on geopolitically, as we're seeing, you know, the attacks. Oh, Jordan, they're hitting Jordan. It's those militias, you know, those Iran-backed militias. In my last video, I talked about how now it's come out through the National Security Advisor out of al-Moudi, out of Iraq, that they have discovered that there's massive Ukrainian paramilitary influence and control and money, and there's over 800,000 weapons, okay, that have gone missing out of taxpayer-funded, you know, to Ukraine, and all of this, right? And so what we get here is that now Boeing, okay, all right, let me finish that thought. So we have now the situation where, oh, they're striking the Jordan bases, they've been striking the, you know, American base in Syria, all of this action out of Iraq. And this identification coming out of al-Moudi is saying, hey, we know this is Ukrainian connected here. And this comes just literally, okay, 2 days after Zelensky kind of outs himself by saying, hey, I'm working for Netanyahu. That's why we hit that ship in the Caspian Sea, that Russian ship with the Iranian drones on it, right? And he's making it known more and more, coming to the White House with, you know, at the same time as Zelensky and Netanyahu together, and them attending the Graham funeral together. And of course, what keeps not being talked about, I can't really see anybody talking about it. It was totally, you know, not mentioned on AUK or, you know, anywhere, about Trump's very interesting eulogy, where he specifically over and over, at least 3 times, talked about Graham and the blowing up of his phone. Okay, he was referencing the past when he had given out Graham's phone number, and how his phone just blew up, right? And he said, you know, here's his number again, just give it a shot. And he said again, you know, we just blew up his phone. And all of this, I believe, was very directed, at least in that time, in the National Cathedral at those two, because of what had gone down and how Graham died. And the situation with Palantir, how they installed Palantir through Fedorov, the ex foreign minister, defense minister, who was ousted 2 days later after Graham died suddenly in Ukraine. And so putting all of this together, we're seeing also exposed the massive situation of the missing weapons, the Ukrainian paramilitary forces working out of Iraq. Okay, and then of course Assadi, the prime minister of Iraq, basically saying, they're looking into what's going on here, while the U.S. is supposedly hitting, these Iraqi forces, and on the mainstream news, it's the Iraqi IRGC Iranian-backed, paramilitary groups, and yes, it is. They're all interconnected. This is the thing, okay? The Israeli forces with the IRGC, with the City of London, with all of these groups, like they have been for decades and decades, since and everything McCain, what we know about the funding of these Middle East militias to keep perpetual war, and what Trump is trying to undo. So this is who they're going after, and this whole situation with Saudi Arabia getting pulled into the mix, and what it has to do with the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. Okay, and I know I just butchered that, but I don't have it in my head at this moment. And Israel positioning itself there in Somaliland. So there's a tracking step by step here of on the tails of exposing these globalist connections, okay, and these this apparatus, okay, of the bankster elite warfare against the USA and the control of energy, is this sort of this following behind as Israel's positioning itself in various places to do these jobs, basically for Trump. They think they're, whatever they think they're doing is, there's like this step by step of a cleanup act of shutting down all these ties, okay? And when we have Zelensky coming out open into the public and saying, me and Netanyahu were tied at the hip, it's all very interestingly timed. Okay, now the takedown of the militias out of Iraq, okay, to do with our taxpayer money, funded weapons gone missing. Now there's like 100. There's tons of them being laundered through the Italian mafia. That just came out as well, where you're having Cosa Nostra or whatever. I'll get to that in a second. Where you're having like the Sicilian mafia and the others getting tons of this. There's already even this year in 2026. There's something like 150,000 of these weapons have gone missing just even in this year. Okay, and so we're looking at all of this kind of being dissembled and showing the players bit by bit, okay, on the world stage. And the interconnection here is very interesting. And also that comes out at the same time, right, is you get Boeing coming out, and Trump knew this from the beginning when he says, oh yeah, we'll just give you those licenses for those Patriot missiles, right? Because you've got Tom Cotton and you've got all your Israel firsters in our disgusting Senate and House paid off, right, to fuse the military with and the Senate Intelligence Authorization Act with Israel. And Tom Cotton just came out today and was like, we want to merge it. We need to pass this SIAA and this NDAA so we can merge. That would be the best thing, right? And he's out of Arkansas, right? The corrupt and captured state of Arkansas, where you have Sarah Huckabee Sanders as governor, creating Islam Heritage Month, which there is no such thing. There was 100 Muslims in the U.S. at the revolution, and they were here basically by accident. There were 100 mosques back in 1960. Now there's about 3,500 in the U.S. Right, and then you get, of course, Huckabee, Mike Huckabee, the disheveled looking crazier every time you see him on TV, Fox News, just living there in Tel Aviv, being the ambassador basically for Israel. So that's what's going on, is we're seeing now Boeing coming out and saying, no, sorry, we're not willing to do those licenses. We're not willing to give our totally proprietary intellectual property and licenses to a foreign power, not to Ukraine, not even to Germany, where of course that was the plan. We're going to put them in Germany, right, says President Merz. And they were kind of chomping at the bit, to have this be their next thing. And Zelensky gets played coming here. Oh yeah, we'll give you the license. Yeah, we remember NATO, the summit. We'll give you the licenses, right? And no, Boeing's come out and said they're blocking the Patriot missile defense warheads, right, that they make, which are the PAC-3 interceptors for the warheads for the Patriot missile system. And they're just basically saying, no, we're not doing it. So this is very important to see, okay, as the timing keeps moving step by step as the days keep passing, right? And so as we watch that happen, then we get Mikhail Fedorov coming out today, and he was that Ukrainian ex-defense minister. He's 35 years old, and he's the popular choice for the people of Ukraine who came out and protested when he was fired, that they love this guy and want him to be the next president, supposedly. You never know into the rabbit hole how far these things go, because one of his big things was he brought Palantir in immediately, and he was only there for 6 months, but he brought Palantir in, and basically he was working very closely with NABU, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, to go and dig into all of the oligarch corporation, private money, massively just, stealing the billions of U.S. taxpayer dollars and weapons that have gone into Ukraine. And so they brought Palantir in, just like they have in the government here, right, to do this massive, shakedown and search. It's not just surveillance with cameras and drones to kill you. It is massively through the computers and the funding. And that's where you get Secretary Bessent just kind of being a rock here. And what is the massive shakedown, sanctions, seizure, just basically following where all the money's going. And that's what Fedorov was doing. And Fedorov still wants to be president. I believe he's being held there. He refused to work for Palantir after he was fired. But basically, he's claiming, he's coming out and saying, I was fired immediately, and again, fired right after Graham's death, right? And so you have to think like, well, okay, they wanted him out immediately, and just remember Palantir, okay, seeing everything and what information they do or don't have, and how they needed to get Fedorov out. And so, the ambassador to the UK, which is Zelensky, used to be in charge of the military, kicked out, became the ambassador, and they've been grooming him hugely out of City of London and Europe and NATO to be the next president, right? And so this is very interesting about Fedorov coming out and saying that is why he was fired, and now they brought in a super crazy guy who's just openly Nazi, openly Nazi. And he's saying, no, I was kicked out because I was identifying the graft. I was identifying the stealing. And so very, very interesting. And again, as I said, the Trump's very strange eulogy that people just keep ignoring, that the situation of the blowing up of Graham's phone, he must have said it 3 times. And it certainly seems like a giant message to me. Okay, so there's that, right? And then as we keep going, and we're seeing, the paramilitary, Ukrainian forces in Iraq being rooted out, it is very interesting to watch all of this. We have the Polish president coming out and saying, I just want to say, I don't believe in it. I want to debunk any of this. Russia is threatening to imminently attack Poland. That's not happening. It's not a thing. And so this is all very, very interesting. And I think very, very poignant as we're watching this go, step by step, day by day. This is not boots on the ground. This is not, hey, we got the hypersonic missiles coming at you, although they're sitting there. And it is constantly shifting, but it seems to be a very step-by-step process, and I think it's fantastic. And so as we keep watching this, I'll keep digging into what's going down. And so And also Trump coming out very clearly after Graham died and saying, in the last few weeks, Graham was very, very about ending the Iran war. He was saying, "Oh, I think it's time for, before this escalates and becomes the larger world war that they're doing with all of these military forces, these paramilitary groups, calling them, that are different Muslim extremist groups, wanting to pit, the Wahhabism against the Shiites." Saudi Arabia, when House of Saud was installed back in the day by Rothschild et al., um, that basically trying to de-escalate, not attach these into a larger war. And Trump basically saying, that's what Graham was saying to me in the few weeks before he died. Okay, so very interesting to note all of that. And so going on from there, I think I'm going to talk about, there's so much to talk about. I did want to mention the different people who are standing up for the recess in Senate. And I only have 5 of them written down. There's 10, but there's Mike Lee, who I want to be the new leader, who want to stop, pass the Save America Act, stop the recess so that they can get things done, and also to expose all the people who are just, the feckless, disgusting senators. But we've got Marsha Blackburn, you've got Haggerty, you've got Ashley Moody, who's been kicking it out of the park. Basically, she's coming out with legislation for deportation for any illegal aliens caught voting, but also any non-citizens who are here legally, okay, and vote. And so that's amazing. But also, she was a huge player in the Anthony Fauci hearings yesterday, and his legal jeopardy that he's in with giving a statement and then refusing to say anything else, claiming the fifth when he's already pardoned. That's huge legal jeopardy that he's in. And so Ashley Moody, I think, was kind of the star, even though she wasn't that clearly spoken. She had incredible things to say, part of which was, as I was AG of Florida, we were the only state to assemble a grand jury and to try to go after the people who caused the lockdowns and created all the turmoil for the people of Florida. And so she's coming out and saying, let's pass in the Senate what is, out of the House, which is HR 7008, which at least includes the preliminary things like a valid ID to vote, proof of citizenship, etc., and that Congress members can't, trade on stocks, that they can't buy stocks while they're in Congress. She said we can push that through. But what's very interesting about her and her pointing that out to Fauci in the hearing yesterday was that already now, okay, we know there's going to be the contempt of Congress vote, which will likely fail. That Senator Paul put forward for vote next week, just no emergency next week. But then immediately, even the same night, okay, immediately you get Florida, the AG of Florida, that replaced Moody because she was then basically chosen, appointed to be the next senator in Florida, out of Florida. Well, the new AG, who's also a fantastic hard hitter, has also already said, we're opening a investigation here in the Department of Justice in Florida into Fauci, considering his legal jeopardy, his inability to speak before Congress. And this goes into, I believe, what's coming out simultaneously, just very well timed, of the judge dismissing the Biden's appeal to try to keep the Robert Hur files, sealed, that show that Biden was totally non-compos mentis, that he that he revealed tons of national security information to his former, who was his ghostwriter for his book, and that's happening all at the same time because what Ashley Moody pointed out, okay, about Fauci, right, is that you have this situation where he got the same pardon as Hunter Biden, the same exact one, meaning back to 2014. So what she basically said, she said, only you and Hunter Biden got this extensive 12-year pardon back to 2014. And, this gets into, she basically, she said this is EcoHealth Alliance. This is, of course, what's unsaid is Metabiota. We've got the Ukrainian biolabs that was Tulsi Gabbard's job to expose that for us to really know that's a real thing, not a conspiracy theory that MS Now would say, or CNN. But basically that she basically said, this gain of function research, EcoHealth Alliance, back to 2014, she said that's also the time where you started funding this research at the Wuhan lab. And so she's laying that out there. And then what do we get within 24 hours? And this was, also put forth by Peter Navarro and others have been saying for, years, but that the states need to go after Fauci. Okay. But the Robert Hur side, right, with the ghostwriter guy, what's his name? He has an interesting name. The ghostwriter guy, who basically just, there was all this crazy amounts of national security, totally classified information that Biden had stolen, okay, and that there was from his garage and everywhere else when he was senator and vice president and had no right to have those documents, let alone give them to a ghostwriter to provide for his memoir. And so when Robert Hur investigated, he said, "Oh, he's too far gone. We can't really prosecute him," which is absolutely baloney. So what I'm trying to say here is that by that being said by a judge that can be unsealed means that they can prove that Biden was not corpus mentis to be able to give those pardons, okay? That the auto pen president did not consciously give those pardons on his way out the door on the last day, that those were designed by the others, okay? And we have, remember who are the other ones that pled the fifth the whole time besides Fauci? That was those people talking about the auto pen. That was the hearing on the auto pen. And so this is where I think it's going to get into some really good stuff going forward, and we're going to see some great things. We are, and so very exciting about that. Florida's going for it again, doing the heavy lifting, while DeSantis is still in there. He's ended up doing such amazing work in Florida, and so looking at that. I'm almost like I could have DeSantis, show his head a little further in 2028 because of his experience and what he's been able to get done. Just saying. But there we go. So I think that's very, very, very interesting. Okay. Everybody else was just doing sound points, except for like Rick Scott with Fauci. I mean, talking about, hard hitting evidence, and Rand Paul. But the other ones were just, expressing rage. I mean, good stuff. But this, I think, connects to that they will be able to establish that Biden did not give those pardons, that the pardons are not legal, and that Fauci will be able to be prosecuted, but also within the states is a great way to go because it does not extend to the states, and certainly not under the circumstances in which the pardon was given. And so I think that Florida investigation being launched is fantastic. Okay, that's it. And I'm going to move on from there. I think I'm going to talk about a couple more things before I go. There's so much I'm going to actually get more into tomorrow. That is more sort of general that I want to talk about, but I'm just going to cover a few more points here. I think another thing that's being played out point by point as we saw all these election stealing in California that went on with the primaries, and how they know so much, like with Mamdani, huge investigation by the FBI and the U.S. attorney in New York. We're seeing the election steal the primaries, and going back to Mamdani's election is being hugely investigated. But now, as we see the election steal that just happened in California, And you saw Steve Hilton, just wilt, at the last minute, all this ridiculousness with the mayor race in LA. Well, Javier Becerra, who was the head of HHS under Biden during the whole crime of COVID, that was laid the plan for the total destruction of America. Um, Javier Becerra, after ruining the New York school system, that was his job before. Then he was brought up after his success in destroying the New York schools and getting them ready for the lockdown that would come. He then, of course, became head of HHS out of nowhere, right? People are mad that Pulte, right, was head of ODNI for 6 weeks, right? But Javier Becerra becomes head of HHS, and he, of course, with Mayorkas and Hayes and the Catholic charities, et cetera, NGOs out the wazoo. There was what's her name, the woman who was chief of staff for Michelle Obama, then was put on another one of the massive charities. All of this trafficking, right, and the massive invasion. But the children, right, the 550,000 children. Now they're saying there's only 130,000 still missing. That seems very dubious and doubtful. Yeah, but Javier Becerra was the one that enabled HHS to do this massive trafficking of children with Mayorkas, Alexei Mayorkas, Alejandro, they call him, right out of Cuba, right? And just think all the focus on Cuba right now and all the operations to do with Cuba. Well, you get all these operatives out of Cuba from the Trotskyite clan. And Alejandro, which was really Alexei, his family came out of, that Ukraine Trotskyite cabal. Well, yeah, Mayorkas with Becerra are the ones that enabled the massive, largest child trafficking operation ever that we know of in modern history. And so there we go. And so he's now being exposed, again, step by step. The timing just keeps going, step by step. And you're seeing now Steve Hilton has been enabled, and I'm sure helped, but massive whistleblowers coming forward, which they already had. Okay, different hearings in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. But now Javier Becerra on the hot seat, right? We saw in Wisconsin just today, the Democrat running for governor there had to step down before all of his crap comes out to the surface. We're seeing Jocelyn Benson getting served today. She's the Democrat pick for governor after running out her 2 terms of election steal, et cetera, Muslimification, Islamifying of Michigan. She's set to be the Democrat, pick for governor of Michigan. She gets served today papers regarding the UCLA, the SPLC. Sorry about that. My brain's like ahead of my speech. The SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, funding of hate groups. She was on the board when that happened, especially the Unite the Right fake FF march in Charlottesville. She gets served papers today for subpoena for investigation. Okay, so the taking down of these people one at a time, Michigan, Wisconsin, all these vital states, California, and now Hilton, being able to push all of this information out about Javier Becerra, right? And hopefully the force of him out of the race, right? And who's he going to flip on? Well, we get to Mayorkas, we get to Hayes, the Hebrew International Aid, whatever. Okay, that just the hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a foundation. It's not just an NGO. It's also a foundation. They always have a foundation over here worth billions, right? And so we're watching this, as Spain today, right, or the Spanish city in Morocco, Ceuta, whatever it's called, Ceuta in Spain, right, where you get the Moroccan cities that belong to the EU. They're EU property. Okay, they're Spanish settled cities in Morocco, where basically, we had the hordes, the Muslim hordes, just allowed to run, to get in there and basically say, hey, the law is I get to claim asylum. You can't just throw me out. And so that's getting huge pushback and attention as well. And and that's, that's fantastic. And something I referred to earlier, where I was talking about Italy, it's come out, of course, and we get, there is a new somebody going to come up hard against that General Vanacci that I've talked about, who's going to be running against Giorgia Meloni, conservative, to restore Italy and to start, forcing back the hordes. That's a real thing. But this is all happening while it's coming out that the mafia, the Cosa Nostra and the Sicilian mafia, are getting tons of these weapons. Okay, they want to upgrade to paramilitary level, because remember that Trump is, the weapons that were meant to go to Ukraine, and all of that, all of the USAID money. You just remember all the John McCain, and there used to be Lindsey Graham, right? At some point he must have got white hatted, and one way or another, forced to or not, we shall see. But what's going on here is that the cartels that Trump has been, just heads at that all, the taking out of the cartels, the capturing of the leaders, the stopping of the drug flows, the seizing of the money, the City of London banks that run the Mexican banks, the money that is the cash cow, the trafficking, whether it's kids, humans, women, labor, drugs, weapons, funding the City of London economy of sin, cash cow machine, that Besson and team are like a boss on top of, like nothing we've ever seen, right? The blowing up the drug boats. So much of the cartels have run to Europe, and they're doing massive amounts of dealing with the European mafias, and Italy, of course, huge in this. So now we're finding out that they are being able to trace a lot of these weapons going through the Italian mafia kingpin organizations. And so as that keeps coming to the fore, I will definitely talk more about that as it comes to light. And I might end on this. I'll end on a couple things. I wanted to bring this to attention. It turns out in a lot of blue states, I know Massachusetts, I've heard other New England states, you're seeing where people's TVs, their televisions, right? And they're all attached to the web, and they're all cameras watching you and whatever. But it looks like something pretty interesting is going on here, where people are talking about that their channels are spontaneously meaning from the behind, okay, some deal going on, I'm sure, of grift. They are switching from like Fox News or other channels, switching to CNN, okay, switching to MSN Now, switching to The View, okay. And it's being reported by conservatives. They walk in a room and their TV's on CNN when they had left a while ago and it was on Fox. And they're like, what is going on? Like, I would never have this channel on. And so they're doing it in kind of blue states because, it's kind of dubious, like, oh, who can we get away with it with? And so part of this is just ratings, because those shows are tanking, right? So behind the scenes, and I'm sure if you get down into the gritty of what is the agreement that they constantly update, new server agreement, new agreement, new agreement, new agreement, Samsung and these other televisions, the LG and etc. Somewhere in there is probably something that says we can change your channel whenever we want, right? And they're probably paid to do so to increase the ratings of these dead shows that are just tanking of the mainstream media. And so very interesting to hear lots of reports that coming in, things like Xfinity and Dish and other providers out there. And so very interesting to watch that. And also in Massachusetts, I focus on Massachusetts because it's like a captured, the epitome of what should be the American Commonwealth, with the, advent of the revolution of 1776, of our creation of America. And it's so captured now. There's over 114 House Democrat seats in the state House alone that run totally unopposed, completely unopposed. Their GOP is just a total ridiculous thing. Nothing is funded. There's no people that are put up to go against these people, when there's a huge amount of conservatives in Massachusetts, in New England. And it's just being done. And why, COVID was such an important destruction mechanism besides being a massive genocidal tool. Well, Fauci is a psychotic mass murderer genocider, running in the tradition of Wolf and Gottlieb, there with their love of murder and death and mind control and poisoning, is that it was also, of course, to totally destroy the rule of law, to totally destroy the rule of law, where there is a situation where, all of a sudden with COVID, suddenly all the zoning rules went out the window. It was, first of all, it was just shut down your business and whatever. But then it was like all of a sudden, it would take you decades and years to be able to apply for a permit to maybe have outdoor seating, at your cafe that was on a public sidewalk. And those things cost tons and tons of money. Suddenly it was like, no, go ahead, just put yourself, just seat people outside, right? And all this zoning gray zone that came, like all of a sudden Airbnbs, they're totally legal, whereas before it was just zoning and fight back. Like, no, we want to keep the integrity of our town. We want to keep the character and preservation. They have what are protective zoning bylaws, across the country that were just trashed and smashed. And they think they can just keep doing it now, which is why Mom Dami can just say, hey, we're going to rent control everything. We're going to change the zoning of, who does what where. They're doing the same thing in Massachusetts, where they're trying to totally get rid of residential, the right to residential only zoning, right? They want to get rid of the single family home. They want apartment buildings everywhere. And they're specifically going, for the heart of our country, in its revolutionary era, because that is the capture, that is the invasion, that is the siege and the conquering. Okay, New York City, right? And of course, Boston coming soon. So I want to point that out. There's massive attack on the zoning laws, as well as I talked about the last video of Massachusetts also, where they're now creating, trying massively to pass this law to create a protected class for Islamists, and that they also get preferential and desired entry into state jobs, right? Sound familiar? Yeah. So I wanted to put that out there, that what Fauci committed with his mass murder, and not only mass murder, but the maiming of humanity forever, potentially through the bioshot weapon that that alters the DNA and accelerates mass disease for everybody, and all the deaths that came later. He himself, even when the shot was just coming out, by his own speech, when he was on the street in DC, in those African American neighborhoods, trying to convince people of lesser monetary means that they must go and get the shot, and he gets his ass handed to him by this one man who's like, I'm not taking that shot. That shot just came out like you developed that in 6 months. I'm not taking it. And Fauci comes out and says, hey, 600,000 people have died. So he admits, and now he's caught out. He admits to at least 600,000 are dead, and now he's caught out. And we know it's tens and tens and hundreds and hundreds of millions of people, but also the maiming of the DNA and the capture of the DNA and the insertion of technology into our bodies that is extremely difficult to fight to get out. And so on top of that, right, was the lawlessness, okay? The lawlessness that collapsed the laws, made them not applicable when they absolutely are. And how did they do it all? They did it through this national emergency. Remember, in April 2020, the national emergency was declared. But you know what? The national emergency was never undeclared. Congress had a year to object to there being a national emergency using national emergency powers, right? And they never, in that year, that is the legal time they have to protest it, to end it, to say, no, through legislation, we're ending the national emergency. Why didn't they? Because it was like a $5 trillion grab and a entry to destroy, the way to have lawlessness and go against the Constitution and steal tons and tons and tons of money, which is our feckless, disgusting Congress, their NGO partners, and all of them. We're seeing the fraud, so wonderfully exposed now, and using the migrant population, not using, totally psyched, part of that I'm going to get into tomorrow to do with the Indian, meaning from India people and what they've gotten through all this is massive. But this this national emergency, because we keep saying, well, Trump is going to declare one, but it still exists. We're still in a national emergency. It's never been undeclared. So maybe that is already in the mix here as we approach the critical Rubicon that is the midterms and what needs to be done to stop these lawless, disgusting destroyers of our country. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope that you found something helpful and interesting analysis. If something struck you with this video and you want to support the channel, it would be so appreciated and welcome. And there's ways to do so below. We're moving step by step, and I'd love to keep going as we keep watching this incredible, animating contest of liberty continue, because it is amazing and fantastic. And so I will plug for my fantastic sponsors here at the end. This is c60evo.com/YAFTV. Use the code YAFTV for 10% off. They support me, so I like to support them with these videos to just let you know how much this incredible molecule can help in your healing process. This gets into your mitochondria. So all that crap that Fauci et al., and they're just, so many of them, okay, these evil, death-loving cult that's out there. This helps to clean out the garbage from your mitochondria, of course, which is the building blocks of your DNA. So what we get here is this molecule that goes into your mitochondria, into your neurons, all of them throughout your body, works with your master hormones, glutathione, melatonin, to get the garbage out. It is an amazing cellular healer, and it's being used for everything from the big C clinics, working in tandem to cure degenerative diseases, especially turbo diseases. And it is just incredible what it does. But just on the basic level, when it comes to your mood, your energy, your focus, your inflammation levels, it is amazing for inflammaging. And of course, remember the cytokine storm, the cytokine response, what the spikes proteins do, all of it, right? We just saw, we're seeing people still dying constantly from what this biowarfare has done to us. And this is a really amazing, potent, incredible product. This is the olive oil. It is the most potent and super pure, made in Houston, Texas. Incredible anti-radiation, including electromagnetic radiation, all the microwave pollution we are sitting through right now. They're doing a massive microwave storm on us right now. Also, and this is the MCT oil. If you're more into it for the workouts and the MCT, lifestyle, this is a great way to go as well. And so check them out. I also give away 2 bottles of the capsules every month, randomly selected for people who support the channel. That's just, you get a random selection, and then 2 people are selected, and there is the capsules, which are so great to carry around. They are the olive oil, and it's the end of the month, so if you support, you'll get entered in that giveaway, and anyone who supports the channel gets 15% off with a different code and link sent to you. Thanks so much for listening to me plug. I so appreciate you. Keep praying, put on God's armor. We're looking at an incredible future, but we have to keep strong now, and we have to take on God's armor and pray, especially with other people, especially in groups, especially with intention, that you come together to speak about these things openly together, and not just on devices back and forth or texting or Facebook groups, that you come together and speak intention into your prayers for what is not only the survival of USA in this, golden age to come, but also for humanity and the defeat of cartel Babylon, right? The bankster elite attempt to capture and control the world. It is an amazing and privileged place that we have in history right now. So take every advantage of it. Thanks so much for watching. You are free.